4 in 6 for Oscar Piastri, who extends his lead of the F1 Drivers' title after winning the Miami Grand Prix. Elsewhere, more radio tension between Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari as questions continue to unravel over the Italian team strategy. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm delighted to be joined, as always, by lead editor Ian Parks. Now, Ian, we've got to start with something because the whole weekend we've been bigging up. There's thunderstorms reported for the race. There's going to be heavy rain showers. The FIA, before the race, even released a document stating what would happen should there be lightning during the race. And guess how much how much rain we got? Absolutely none.
No. And yet, just a few hours earlier, Nick, the F1 Academy race was absolutely drenched. They toured around the Miami International Autodrome for several laps behind the safety car, several formation laps behind the safety car, hoping and praying that the rain would eventually relent. It didn't, to such an extent that, given the time frame and the rest of the schedule for the afternoon, they had to cancel the F1 Academy race. Just tremendous scenes. And you thought, okay, this could be interesting. Yes, the track did dry up, but as you say, the forecast was there. I spoke to one of the team strategists. I spoke to Mario Isola, the Pirelli Motorsport director, just before the start of the race, around a half an hour beforehand, and said, what's your forecast? What's it looking like? And he said, 40% chance of rain for the start, 60% chance of something during it. And of course, we heard radio messages. Guys, to Fernando, I think to George, guys, get prepared. It looks like we got some rain coming in 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And I know you are on top of all the weather radar.
I am, always.
And even you were saying, guys, this looks like it's going to absolutely bucket it down. And what happened? Yes, it bucketed it down over certain areas of Miami. It just never bucketed it down over the Hard Rock Stadium and the Miami International Autodrome. And that left us with, a good race for 19 laps, and then a completely tedious one for the 38 that then followed, because once Max had done his absolute damnedest to try and fend off first Oscar Piastri and then Lando Norris, that was pretty much it. It was a McLaren 1-2. And basically we had more action with the 1-to-1 scale Lego cars that toured the track pre-race on the parade. Very different parade lap, it must be said, compared to the action that we had, as I say, for pretty much around 38 laps, I would suggest. I think I remember correctly, I think Lando got past Max on lap 19, and that was it. Pretty much race done and dusted.
The thing that was quite remarkable, it really was, because the thing that was quite staggering watching the weather radar, and you're right, I was putting messages into our Slack chat for racing saying, it's coming, guys, because what was remarkable, and quite a lot of times for those obviously in the UK would have heard David Croft, the commentator, referring to the term like an envelope, in fact that the Miami International Autodrome was kind of sitting in the middle of an envelope, and all the heavy rain was either side of it. Literally, all of Miami got very torrential downpours apart from the Miami International Autodrome, it seems. It was remarkable. And obviously, as you mentioned, in the end, we got a McLaren 1-2, Oscar Piastri winning from fourth on the grid. But in the end, I mean, it was the first corner, and in particular, the battles during the race with Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, which really had a big say, actually, over Oscar winning the race.
Yeah, turns 1 and 2, because as we saw, Max was on pole, another tremendous pole position from him, of course. Lando Norris alongside him on the front row of the grid. And we saw a little lockup from Max going into turn 1. That opened a window of opportunity that Lando Norris tried to exploit. But in going through turn 2, and bearing in mind the new driving standards guidelines that we have now, any driver trying to make a move around the outside is really scuppered. Max closed the door. Lando had to go off track, and in returning, we dropped to 6th position, and that was his opportunity, pretty much scuppered for the Grand Prix victory. Now, he did actually get within touching distance of what then unfolded between Max and Oscar. Oscar had a good tussle with Max, and eventually got past him. I think it was around about lap 14. At that stage, Lando had really closed the gap. He got past the drivers ahead of him. And as I say, I think he was in just about 2 or 3 seconds behind Oscar at that stage of the race when Oscar was starting to challenge Max. But unfortunately for Lando, his battle with Max took a hell of a lot longer before he finally prevailed. And once he did prevail, Oscar was away and gone up the road ahead. And as I say, race done and dusted. Another McLaren 1-2. Oscar Piastri's 4th victory in 6 Grand Prix. Now, he's opened up a little bit of a cushion over his teammate. Max, of course, has dropped back because he finished 4th on the road. However, we do have some news on that, Nick, don't we?
We do, and obviously at the time we're recording this, Red Bull has lodged a protest at the result of the Miami Grand Prix, and in particular, George Russell, whether he sped during it was a full course yellow, if I'm correct. It's been so much going on today, but effectively...
Virtual safety car period.
There you go, yeah. George Russell had provisionally finished 3rd with Max Verstappen in 4th, so we're recording this video now because quite simply, these things in the past can be decided very, very quickly, or can take, well, hours, where we never quite know. So, of course, when the decision is released, we'll leave a note in the top of the comment section of this video. But yes, Ian, that's a chance that Max could potentially get a podium instead of 4th.
Yeah, the reason behind the protest, Nick, is because that Red Bull team principal Christian Horner has claimed that they have GPS data that showed, actually it was double yellows, and at some point, if I remember right, I was thinking something to do with the yellow flags anyway.
Yeah.
And it's late. And basically they have GPS data that showed that what you cannot obviously accelerate and increase your speed during that kind of period. Yeah. And they've got, as I said, they've got this GPS data that showed that whilst George Russell lifted, actually his speed did increase. So is he going to get that 3rd position? As I say, we don't know at this stage. It's now in the hands of the FIA. We'll see if the protest is, first of all, admissible, and then whether there might be an investigation beyond that. So as with the protest, it's always a case that the protesting team, i.e. Red Bull in this case, has to hand in significant evidence above and beyond anything that was viewed at that particular time that was on track. So Red Bull says it's got GPS data. Is it going to be admissible? They're looking at it. And as Nick has pointed out, folks, we will give you the verdict. Not in this video, unfortunately. It will be somewhere on our YouTube page and, of course, within our content, written content on Racing News 365 website.
And of course, George Russell got ahead of Max. He had been behind for the opening stages, but managed to get ahead after pitting during a virtual safety car. Max pitted just before, so it was a cheap pit stop for Russell. It was very unlucky. I mean, safety cars, well, virtual safety cars, any kind of thing that's got a safety car in the name does not seem to be very lucky for Max Verstappen in Miami, but it was under
Miami,
it was under a virtual safety car that George Russell managed to get ahead of Max and into 3rd. But the particular virtual safety car in which George got ahead of Max, crucially, was also one quite had a big talking point behind Ferrari's race because of course Lewis Hamilton qualified in 12th, had no pace on Saturday in the qualifying, but remarkably, after pitting under the virtual safety car, found himself in the top 10 with really, really good pace, got onto the rear of Charles Leclerc in a battle for 7th, and, well, it resulted in some tasty radio conversations.
Tasty indeed. It was actually very unusual from Lewis Hamilton, given the conversations he was having with his race engineer, Riccardo Adami. You have to forgive the light, folks. All of a sudden, I've got some luminous advertising that runs around the stadium. You can probably just see it just there, that there. And it's casting different lights because obviously we're losing the actual daylight inside the Hard Rock Stadium now. So what you're seeing now is the reflection on my face of this advertising strip that runs around inside the stadium here. So there you go. Look, changing color once again. It looks like I'm in some sort of bloody disco, mate, in all honesty. So I know. So yeah, just getting back to Lewis's radio message. As you say, a little bit feisty, a little bit.
Yeah.
Speaking to Lewis in the pen though, he was actually in a really good mood. He was quite happy. He was actually quite happy with his performance. And it his radio messages were more like, come on, guys, just get on with it, make a decision. Because there was a little bit of frustration, obviously, with the fact that what happened was that he'd started on the hard tire and Charlotte started on the medium. And under that VSC period, it was the natural opportunity to bring the drivers in to then switch to the opposite. So Lewis came out on the medium, had to do a long stint on that medium, more than was probably required for that tire. And then obviously Charles was on the hard. So naturally, as Lewis had caught up to Charles, he felt he got the pace and that they really should swap positions to allow him that opportunity on the quicker tire, if at all possible, to try and make some inroads on the cars ahead. And if I remember right, it was Mercedes Kimi Antonelli who was the direct competitor that Lewis might have had an opportunity to get up behind and make a pass. Fortunately for Lewis, he felt Ferrari just took too long to make its decision. And Ferrari at one point said, look, we're staying with this right now, Lewis. And Lewis said, okay, go on a tea break then. Gives you some idea as to what he was thinking and feeling. Now, Lewis was adamant that he wasn't having a go at the team. He wasn't trying to be unnaturally obtuse. That he just really wanted to try and like shibby the team along, just to push them along to make a decision and just help his cause, help the team's cause. Unfortunately, that call came a little bit too late, because yes, while Charles eventually did relent and allowed Lewis to get past, Lewis then pretty much had lost that initial pace out of his tires, and he was unable to make steps to try and catch up to the back of Kimi Antonelli, to such an extent that Lewis actually got sucked back in towards DRS of Charles. Charles eventually got past, and that was a game run from Ferrari. But again, just one of those though. Overall, the lack of pace in that car. These are two drivers that are fighting for the minor points places, 6th and 7th on the road on this occasion. So yes, another weekend for Ferrari where it's got to dig deep into all its resources. Charles and Lewis are 100% united, and they're going to join forces to really try and bolster the team to make as much progress as possible. Because as Lewis pointed out, both he and Charles know there is performance in that car. They can sense it, they can feel it. It's just about trying to unlock it to then get the best out of it, to hopefully at some stage at this season, but already this season is starting to fade away from Ferrari, but hopefully at some stage to challenge the likes, certainly of Mercedes and Red Bull right now, maybe not as far ahead as McLaren, because McLaren were in a different league, given the pace deficit between Lando and Oscar, certainly compared to Max Verstappen and George Russell.
Quite clearly easier said than done for Ferrari at the moment. Just to go through the top 10 from, provisional top 10, obviously depending on the result of this protest. Oscar Piastri is definitely the winner of the Miami Grand Prix. Ahead of Norris in second, George Russell provisionally in third, ahead of Verstappen in fourth, Alex Albon in fifth, who we will touch on finally in just a moment. Kimi Antonelli in sixth, Leclerc in seventh, Lewis Hamilton in eighth, Carlos Sainz in ninth, with Yuki Tsunoda picking up a point in P10. And just to finally, Ian, I mean, double points for Williams, in particular, Alex Albon, P5, ahead of both Ferraris, ahead of Kimi Antonelli. That Williams car is quite clearly the best in the midfield. And I mean, as proven by Alex, can compete with some of the big teams.
Yeah, a little bit of a background story to that one as well, Nick, because we saw the two Williams guys fighting early on. And eventually Carlos managed to get ahead of Alex. And speaking to Carlos in the media pen afterwards, he told us that at that stage, the two drivers were told to freeze positions. Now, Carlos is unsure whether Alex actually got that message, because Alex decided to fight back and reclaim the position. Carlos was also a little bit unhappy because of the way qualifying had planned out, and it left him having to start on a used tire, which a little bit of frustration there. And so that then ultimately compromised him throughout the rest of the Grand Prix with regard to tire choice, which is why he was unable to do as well as Alex, as you say, 5th position on the road for Alex. And what was it, 8th or 9th? So did you say, Mick, for Carlos?
9th for Carlos.
9th for Carlos. So it's no tension, but just and again, like at Ferrari with Charles and Lewis, just one of those little things that is going to have to be cleared up behind the scenes going forward, just to make sure that everybody is on the same page and there's no repeat of what unfolded. But yes, right now, Williams looking a very strong team indeed. Certainly they are pushing, most definitely, Ferrari, and at this stage, not too far off the pace of Red Bull and just about on the pace of Mercedes.
And of course, we will discuss more topics in more detail from the Miami Grand Prix in Monday's podcast with obviously Ian, myself, and Sam. Absolutely. Peace out, Coop. Ian, amazing stuff. As always, for those who are watching this video, please do let us know your thoughts on the Miami Grand Prix in the comment section below. Please do also smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. And as I just mentioned, Ian and I will see you in the podcast on Monday. See you later.
Thanks for watching and listening as always, smokers. Take care.